The courtroom was silent, all eyes on me. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I stood there in front of everyone. Emily, my wife, the woman I trusted more than anyone, was seated across from me, her face twisted with a smirk, clearly enjoying the chaos she created. I never thought I'd find myself in this position. But here I was, about to do something no one saw coming. I ripped off my shirt. The entire room froze. The air felt thick as if time itself had paused. I could hear nothing but the rush of blood in my ears, drowning out the whispers and gasps around me. But I didn't care. Not anymore. The shirt hit the floor with a soft thud, and as I looked up at the judge, my mind replayed the words I'd overheard only hours before. You've been lying to me for months, Emily. But now, everyone is going to know the truth. The gasp from the room was deafening. Emily's face turned a shade of red I'd never seen before, and for a moment, I saw something I hadn't expected: fear. A real, raw fear that she was about to lose everything. But how did I get here? How did a simple morning coffee with my wife turn into this? How did I find myself standing in a courtroom, about to expose her betrayal to everyone? The events leading up to this moment were nothing short of a nightmare, and I never saw any of it coming. What had started as a calm day of routine was about to shatter my entire world. And it all started when I stumbled upon a text message, one that would make everything I thought I knew about my wife come crashing down. I never thought I'd be here, standing in the courtroom, moments away from exposing everything to the world. But I had no choice. The truth had to come out, no matter how much it hurt. And the hurt, God, it was unbearable. I'm not a jealous man. I never was. I trusted Emily completely. She was everything to me. We had built a life together, raised 2 beautiful children, and everything seemed perfect. But deep down, a nagging feeling had been creeping up on me for weeks. I couldn't shake it. The little things that didn't add up. The way Emily would suddenly go quiet when I entered the room, like she was hiding something. The late-night work meetings she would attend, leaving me alone on the couch. The increasing number of times she'd get too busy to answer my calls or texts. It was small, subtle stuff, but it added up. Something didn't feel right. Then there were the changes in her. She was different. The woman I once knew, the woman who used to laugh at my bad jokes and dance around the house in her pajamas, was gone. In her place was someone colder, more distant. Every time I tried to get close, she pushed me away. It didn't take a genius to figure out that something was off. But even then, I didn't want to believe it. I kept telling myself I was being paranoid. I didn't want to acknowledge the possibility that the love of my life, the mother of my children, was doing something unspeakable behind my back. It all came to a head the night I found the phone. I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone absent-mindedly, when I glanced over at the kitchen counter. Emily's phone was lying there, face up, as if she had carelessly left it behind. I'd never been the type to snoop through her things. But that night, maybe it was fate, maybe it was my gut telling me to look, I grabbed her phone. And when I saw the name Nick on the screen, my world started to unravel. Nick. The name didn't mean anything to me at first. It was just another contact in her phone, another name in a sea of innocuous faces. But when I saw the message, I can't wait to see you tonight. I missed you so much, Emily. I need you. I froze. Time stopped. I couldn't breathe. Everything around me felt like it was closing in. The walls, the air, the light, they all faded into the background as the words on the screen became the only thing that mattered. This was real. This was happening. My wife, the woman I had trusted with my soul, was having an affair. A full-blown affair. I'm not sure how long I stood there, staring at the phone in disbelief. The message, so raw, so blatant in its desire, was like a slap to the face. My mind raced through every possible scenario, trying to make sense of it. Maybe it was a joke? A misunderstanding? But deep down, I knew better. I knew what I was seeing. This wasn't a one-time slip-up. This was a betrayal of the highest order. And it wasn't just about physical infidelity. It was emotional. It was trust. It was everything. I quickly scrolled through the conversation, my heart sinking further with each word. Nick wasn't just some random fling. No, he was someone who had been in her life for months. The messages were full of passion, longing, and promises of future encounters. I miss you so much, baby. When can I see you again? The words hit me like a punch in the stomach. I had to sit down, my legs growing weak beneath me. But then something strange happened. A part of me wanted to scream, to throw the phone across the room, to demand answers right then and there. But another part of me, the part that had always been calm and composed, knew I couldn't act out of sheer anger. I needed to confront her. I needed to hear the lies spill from her mouth. I needed to see if she would even admit to the truth. My hands were shaking as I placed the phone back on the counter, my mind still racing. I knew I had to do something. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about our kids, our family. Everything we had built together was now a lie. But before I could make my move, Emily walked into the room, humming to herself, completely unaware of the storm that was about to hit. She smiled at me, that same fake, pleasant smile she had been wearing for weeks now. But there was a nervousness in her eyes, something I hadn't noticed before. She knew. She had to know that I knew. "Hi, honey. What's up?" she asked, trying to act casual. But the tension in the air was thick. I could feel it. She was waiting for me to say something, anything. I stood up, my jaw clenched. "Emily," I began, my voice low and steady, though my insides were shaking with rage. "We need to talk." She froze. The smile on her face faltered just for a second, but it was enough for me to see the crack in her mask. "What about?" she asked, her voice suddenly too sweet, too rehearsed. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside me. "I know about Nick," I said, my voice finally breaking the silence. Her face went pale. She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. It was almost as if she couldn't believe it. She couldn't believe I had found out. The room felt like it was suffocating me. My throat was dry, and my hands trembled as I watched Emily's face twist in disbelief. She stood there, frozen, her expression a mix of fear and deflection. I had just torn down the walls of our life, and now there was no going back. The truth was out in the open, and I was determined to make her face it. But instead of responding, Emily's eyes shifted away from mine. She looked at the floor, then back at the phone on the counter, as if trying to think of some lie that would make everything disappear. I wasn't having it. "You don't get to lie to me anymore, Emily," I said, my voice firm. The anger in my chest was swelling, but I couldn't let it consume me. I had to stay in control. "I know about Nick. I know what's been happening behind my back. You don't get to play me for a fool." Emily opened her mouth to say something, but I held up my hand, stopping her. "Don't. Just don't even try." The words hung in the air like daggers. I wasn't sure if I was ready to hear her excuses, but I knew she was going to try anyway. That's what she always did. But I was done with the lies. I had lived with them for so long, but now it was clear. She wasn't the woman I thought she was. She wasn't the person I had given my heart to, my trust, my life. No, she had shown me a side I didn't recognize, and now there was no going back. I could see the hesitation in her eyes. She was calculating, trying to figure out how to spin this. But I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. I had caught her red-handed, and I wasn't going to let her get away with this. "Why, Emily?" I asked, my voice quieter this time. The anger was still there, but it was tinged with sadness. I didn't want to know the answer, but I had to. "Why would you do this to me? To us? What did I do wrong?" Her eyes darted to the floor, her shoulders slumping in defeat. For a brief moment, I saw her as she was before all of this, a woman I loved, a woman I trusted. But that feeling quickly faded, replaced by a growing sense of betrayal. Emily wasn't just cheating on me. She was destroying everything we had built together. I had been nothing but loyal to her, and now I was left to pick up the pieces of a life I thought was perfect. "I didn't mean for it to happen," Emily said, her voice soft and almost pleading. She was trying to sound sincere, but I wasn't buying it. It just happened. Nick was someone I could talk to, someone who listened to me when you didn't. It wasn't about you. It was about me needing someone who understood." I could feel my blood boiling as I processed her words. This was how she was going to explain it? This was the excuse? She was blaming me, as if her actions were my fault. As if I had driven her into the arms of another man. "You're kidding, right?" I said, my voice rising in frustration. "This isn't about some emotional connection, Emily. This is about you being a liar and a cheat. You betrayed me. You betrayed our family." I could see her crumbling under the weight of her own lies. She tried to hold it together, but her facade was cracking. Her hands were shaking now, and the defensiveness in her eyes was giving way to guilt, a feeling she clearly wasn't used to. For a moment, I thought she might come clean, might apologize and beg for forgiveness. But then she straightened up, her eyes narrowing. "I never asked for your forgiveness," she spat, her voice suddenly cold and bitter. "You were always so busy with work, always too wrapped up in your own world to even notice me. You didn't make me feel special anymore. I didn't think you cared. You stopped paying attention to me, and She was blaming me again. I was the reason she did it. I was the cause of her infidelity. The audacity of it. Her words cut deeper than anything she had done physically. She had somehow convinced herself that this was my fault, that I was the one who had pushed her into the arms of another man. No, I said firmly, my voice trembling with rage. This is on you, Emily. This is on your choices. Don't you dare try to make this my fault. I gave you everything, and this is how you repay me. She was silent now, her deflection gone. The tears in her eyes were the only sign of vulnerability left. But it didn't matter. Nothing could undo the damage she had done. I felt a surge of anger, but more than that, I felt a deep sadness. I had been married to this woman for years. We had shared everything, our dreams, our struggles, our triumphs. And now she had thrown it all away for a fleeting affair, a temporary thrill. She had shredded every promise we had made to each other. I don't even know who you are anymore, I whispered, my voice breaking. You're not the woman I married. Emily flinched, but I didn't care. I had to get the words out. I had to let her know how much she had hurt me, how much this betrayal was tearing me apart. She looked up at me, her face softening. I'm sorry, she said, the words almost too quiet to hear. I never wanted to hurt you. But it was too late for apologies. The damage was done. The trust was gone. There was no turning back. I knew what I had to do, and as hard as it was, I couldn't stay in this marriage any longer. The silence in the room felt suffocating, thick with the weight of everything that had been said and unsaid. Emily stood there, her face pale, eyes red from the tears she had shed, but I wasn't moved by it anymore. Her apologies, her soft words, they all felt hollow. They meant nothing. They didn't change the reality that I was standing on the edge of losing everything I had built. My heart was shattered, but I couldn't dwell on the pieces. I had to think about what came next. I felt a surge of frustration rising in my chest, but I forced it back. I wasn't going to let her see me break. Not now. Not when everything had been turned upside down in a matter of minutes. But the pain, God, the pain was unbearable. It gnawed at me, clawed at my insides. She had ripped through my life without a second thought, leaving a trail of lies and shattered promises in her wake. Don't cry now, I said, my voice quieter than I intended. You don't get to cry anymore. Not after everything you've done. Her eyes flickered with a mix of guilt and anger, but she didn't speak. There was nothing she could say. How could she possibly defend her actions? How could she justify the betrayal of everything we had together? All of those years, all of that love, just flushed down the drain for what? For a man who didn't mean anything to her? Or maybe Nick had meant more. Maybe I was just the fool who never saw it coming. I could feel my stomach turning as the bitterness grew inside me. The world around me had shifted, and I didn't know where I stood anymore. I wanted to scream at her, to demand she take it all back, but I knew that wouldn't do anything. Nothing could undo the damage she had caused. Nothing could bring back the trust, the certainty, the love I had once felt for her. I turned away, unable to look at her anymore. She wasn't the woman I had married, the woman I had trusted with everything. The Emily I knew, the one who shared my dreams, the one who had promised we would always be a team, was gone. And in her place stood a stranger, someone who could look me in the eye and lie without hesitation. Are you going to just stand there? I asked, my voice sharp. I didn't know what I wanted from her anymore. I didn't know what I expected, but I knew I couldn't sit here, pretending everything was fine. Not anymore. Do you even care what you've done to us? To this family? For a moment, she looked at me with that same defeated expression. It almost seemed like she was searching for something in me, perhaps an ounce of compassion, maybe a glimmer of hope that I'd forgive her. But I had no forgiveness to give. How could I? She had shattered my world, and now I was left to pick up the pieces, alone. I care, she said quietly, her voice weak, almost as if she was trying to convince herself more than me. I never wanted to hurt you. I never meant for any of this to happen. It just did. I scoffed, shaking my head. Don't you dare tell me you didn't mean for it to happen. You chose this, Emily. You chose to lie, to betray me. Don't act like it was an accident. Don't act like you had no control. Her eyes filled with more tears, but I didn't soften. I couldn't. She didn't deserve my sympathy. Not after everything. I was lonely, she admitted, her voice trembling. I needed someone, and Nick was there for me. I didn't think it would go this far. I didn't think it would hurt you. But I never stopped loving you. The words were so easy for her to say, but they didn't mean anything anymore. You never stopped loving me? Really? I said bitterly, turning back to face her. Then how do you explain what you did? How do you explain lying to my face every single day, pretending everything was fine, when you were out there with him? I didn't know what else to do, she said in a whisper, her shoulders slumping. I was confused. I thought maybe if I had someone to talk to, someone who understood, things would get better. But they didn't. It just made everything worse. You thought you could fix things by running away from the problem? I asked, feeling a mix of anger and disbelief. What kind of solution is that? You tore us apart, Emily. And now you're trying to act like it was just a mistake? Like it didn't matter? For the first time, I saw the full weight of what she had done on her face. It wasn't just guilt anymore. It was regret, real, raw regret. But it wasn't enough. It could never be enough. Not after everything. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. This was it. This was the moment I had been dreading but knew was coming. The decision I had been avoiding for weeks, the one I couldn't escape. I had to make a choice that would change the rest of my life. Emily, I said, my voice steady but final, I don't know if I can do this anymore. I don't know if I can stay with you. The trust is gone. The love is gone. I'm not the man I was before all of this. And I don't think I can go back. Her face twisted, and for a brief moment, I saw desperation in her eyes. What are you saying? You're not leaving me, are you? I didn't respond immediately. My heart was heavy with the weight of the decision, but deep down, I knew I couldn't stay in a relationship built on lies. I couldn't look at her and pretend like everything was okay. The damage was done, and I was already slipping away from her. She had taken everything from me, and now she wanted to hold on? I think we need to separate, I said quietly. I think I need space. We both need space. I need to figure out who I am without you in my life, because right now, I don't recognize myself anymore. The words stung, but they were the truth. Emily's face crumpled as she realized the weight of what I was saying. Please, she whispered, her voice breaking. I never meant for it to be like this. I love you. But it didn't matter anymore. The words were empty. I was done. The days that followed felt like a blur. After that moment, when I told Emily we needed to separate, my world spun out of control. It wasn't just the shock of betrayal that left me reeling. It was the feeling of complete loss, the life I thought I had, the love I thought would last forever, all unraveling in front of me. I didn't know what to do next. I couldn't go back to the life we had before. I couldn't even go back to the person I was before. Each day felt like I was walking through a fog. I went through the motions, work, errands, trying to keep my life from completely falling apart. But every step felt heavy. Every conversation, every glance, reminded me of the life I used to have. It wasn't just the absence of Emily in the house that haunted me. It was the hole that was left inside me. I had built my entire identity around us, our family, our love, and now it was gone, shattered by her lies. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to be angry, and I was. But I was also empty. The rage had faded into numbness. The anger I had felt when I confronted her, the bitterness, had given way to an overwhelming sense of loss. The reality of it all was harder to swallow than I had expected. I started spending more time alone. I needed to process it, to figure out who I was now. I couldn't keep pretending that I was fine, that everything was okay. Because it wasn't. My life had been built on a lie, and everything I knew to be true about Emily had been shattered. One night, as I sat in the quiet of the living room, I found myself staring at the spot where we used to sit together, watching TV, talking about our day. I had always thought that this was the center of my world, our home, our family. But now, that space felt cold. The silence between us had grown so thick that I could barely breathe. The emptiness was suffocating. I glanced at the picture frames on the mantel, the ones that had captured moments of happiness, of laughter, of love. They were nothing more than reminders of a life that no longer existed. I could almost hear the echoes of the past, of all the promises she had made to me, promises she had broken without a second thought. I ran my hand through my hair, exhausted from the constant battle between my emotions. I had so many questions. Why hadn't I seen the signs earlier? How had she hidden it so well? Was there something I had missed? But the biggest question that gnawed at me, that kept me up at night, was whether or not I could ever truly forgive her. I thought about the kids. How would I explain all of this to them? They were too young to understand the complexities of what had happened, but they knew something was off. The tension in the house was palpable. The laughter that had once filled our home was now replaced with quiet whispers, awkward silences. It broke my heart to see them confused, to see the sadness in their eyes. They didn't deserve any of this. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I had to take control of my life again. I couldn't let this define me. I couldn't let Emily's betrayal be the thing that consumed me. The reality was, I had no choice but to move forward. The world wasn't going to stop for my pain, and neither should I. But the thought of moving on without the woman I thought I'd grow old with was terrifying. The idea of starting over, of rebuilding a life from scratch, felt like an insurmountable mountain. How could I even begin? But I had to. for myself, for my kids. I had to rebuild from the ashes, no matter how hard it was going to be. The first step, I realized, was to let go. I had to let go of the fantasy I had created in my mind. The perfect family, the loving wife, the life I had once thought was unbreakable. Because as much as it hurt, as much as it felt like my heart was being ripped out of my chest, I couldn't keep holding on to a life that wasn't real anymore. I reached for my phone, pulling up a list of divorce lawyers that I had been avoiding for days. The thought of divorce had been something I couldn't bring myself to entertain, but I knew it was the only way forward. It wasn't just about ending the relationship with Emily. It was about reclaiming my life, my happiness. I wasn't going to keep living in the shadow of her lies. It was time to make the hard decision and face the consequences. I clicked on the first name on the list and dialed the number. The voice on the other end was calm and professional. "Hello, how can I help you today?" "I need to file for divorce," I said, the words feeling like a weight lifting off my chest. It wasn't just a declaration, it was a statement of freedom. Freedom from the pain. Freedom from the lies. The lawyer on the other end asked me a series of questions, outlining the process, but I could barely focus on what she was saying. My mind was somewhere else, in a place of uncertainty. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know if I could ever love again, if I would ever be able to trust someone the way I had trusted Emily. But at least now, I was taking the first step towards something better. I was taking control. When I hung up the phone, I felt a strange sense of peace, though it was still tainted by the sadness. The divorce would be a long, difficult journey, but it was a journey I had to make. For me, for the kids, for the future I was about to create, no matter how painful it might be. That night, I sat in the dark, staring at the ceiling. The decision had been made. The divorce papers would be filed. The separation would become official. And I would never go back to the person I was before. Emily's betrayal had taken so much from me, but it wouldn't take my future. I would move on, no matter how hard it seemed. I would rebuild. The journey would be long, but it would be mine to navigate. The first few weeks after I made the call to file for divorce felt like a blur. Every moment seemed to stretch into eternity, and the weight of the decision I had made pressed down on me like an invisible burden. It wasn't that I had any doubts. I knew, deep down, that separating from Emily was the only way forward. But the emotions I was experiencing were a chaotic mix of sadness, anger, fear, and, somewhere beneath it all, a flicker of hope. The sadness was the most overwhelming, though. It was the sadness that would hit me in the quiet moments, when I was alone in the house, staring at the empty rooms. The silence that once felt comforting now felt like a suffocating presence. The kids, of course, were still adjusting to everything. They didn't fully understand why Mommy and Daddy weren't together anymore, but I saw the confusion in their eyes, the sadness that mirrored my own. I had to be strong for them. For their sake, I couldn't let my pain consume me. I couldn't let them see how broken I felt inside. I couldn't let them witness the devastation that had taken over my heart. I had to be their anchor, even if I felt like I was drifting out to sea. As I tried to navigate the days, I began to realize how much of my life had revolved around Emily. So much of my identity had been intertwined with her. The vacations we took, the memories we created together, the plans for the future we talked about, the future that was now nothing but a shattered dream. Every corner of our house was filled with memories that now felt like daggers. Every picture frame, every old trinket, every familiar spot in our home seemed to mock me. I was stuck in a place that no longer felt like home. And yet, I couldn't bring myself to leave. I couldn't bring myself to sell the house, to take down the pictures, to erase every trace of the life we had once shared. Part of me wanted to keep it all, hold on to the remnants of what once was. But another part of me knew I couldn't keep living in the past. I couldn't keep clinging to a version of life that didn't exist anymore. It was time to face the reality of the situation. One evening, after putting the kids to bed, I sat on the couch, staring at the television without really seeing it. My mind kept drifting back to Emily, to the way she had looked at me when I told her we needed to separate. I could still see the shock in her eyes, the disbelief, the way she tried to convince me that it wasn't really that bad. But it was that bad. It was worse than she could ever understand. I reached for my phone, scrolling through social media absent-mindedly. A part of me wanted to reach out to someone, anyone, just to talk about everything that was happening. But I didn't know who I could turn to. My friends had always known Emily as the perfect wife, the woman who had everything together. I didn't want to share the details of our broken marriage with them. I didn't want to admit to them that the woman they had thought was so perfect had been living a lie. I stopped scrolling when I saw a message from one of Emily's friends pop up. Her name was Rachel. She had always been kind to me, but I had a feeling she was one of the few people who still kept in touch with Emily. The message was brief. Hey, I heard about you and Emily. I'm so sorry. I know this is a hard time, but if you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here. I stared at the message for a moment. It felt odd to get a message like that from someone who had been so close to Emily, but I appreciated it. I needed someone to talk to, someone who could understand what I was going through. So I responded, my fingers typing quickly as if I had been waiting for this moment. Thanks, Rachel. It's been tough, but I'm managing. I'm not sure where to start, honestly. She responded almost immediately. Take your time. But seriously, if you ever need to vent or just talk, I'm here. It's not easy, I know. We went back and forth for a while, talking about the difficulty of processing everything. I didn't go into detail about the affair, but I told her about the emotional toll the whole situation had taken on me. I explained how much of a shock it had been, how everything I thought I knew about Emily had turned out to be a lie. I told her about the emotional exhaustion, the anger, and the overwhelming sadness that had become my constant companions. For the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of relief. Talking to Rachel, someone who wasn't tied to the situation, helped ease some of the weight. She wasn't judging me or telling me what to do. She was just listening, offering support, and for that, I was grateful. In the following days, I found myself slowly adjusting to this new life. It wasn't easy. Every day felt like I was climbing a steep hill, but with each step, I felt a little bit more in control. I started exercising again, something I hadn't done in months. I started taking care of myself physically, trying to counterbalance the emotional toll the divorce was taking on me. I was trying to rebuild the parts of myself that Emily had chipped away at over the years. One evening, I took the kids to the park. It was something I used to do all the time when Emily was still around. Watching them play, laughing and running around without a care in the world, made me realize that no matter what had happened with Emily, I had to keep going. I couldn't let this define me. I couldn't let her betrayal ruin everything I had left. My children, my health, my future, these were the things that mattered now. As we walked back home, I held their hands tightly, feeling a sense of clarity. I wasn't done. I wasn't broken beyond repair. I had the strength to rebuild, to create a new life, one where I could heal and move forward. It's been a few weeks now since Emily and I agreed to separate, and although I can't say I'm getting used to it, I'm starting to adjust. Slowly, I'm beginning to learn what it means to be a single parent, though that word single still feels foreign on my tongue. The weight of it isn't lost on me. There's a certain isolation that comes with it, a loneliness that hovers around the edges of every moment. And while I'm grateful for the time I've had with my kids, I can't shake the feeling that something's missing. Something fundamental. I never imagined I would be here, navigating through this new life without Emily, without the person who had been by my side for so long. We had always talked about how we would co-parent if the time came. But those discussions were theoretical, filled with the optimism of thinking we'd always be a family. Now that reality has hit, it's nothing like we imagined. The hardest part, though, isn't just about me and Emily, it's about the kids. They've been through so much in the past few weeks. The constant question, why aren't you two together anymore, Daddy, still echoes in my mind. I can see the confusion in their eyes, the hurt, the uncertainty. They don't understand it, but they feel the shift in the atmosphere. They feel the tension, the absence of Emily's presence, and they miss the way things used to be. And that's where the challenge lies. As much as I want to shield them from this mess, as much as I want to pretend that everything is okay, I can't. I can't protect them from the truth. All I can do is try to be there for them, to give them as much stability as I can in a world that's suddenly become so unpredictable. I make sure we keep our routine, dinner at the table, bedtime stories, weekend outings to the park. It's the little things that make a difference. But even the small moments feel heavy. I catch myself staring at their faces, wondering how much they truly understand. I try to keep things light, to create a sense of normalcy, but I know they can feel the absence. I can feel it too. One evening, after the kids had gone to bed, I stood in the kitchen, staring at the empty space where Emily used to stand. It was strange, that empty space. It seemed to highlight just how alone I felt. The house was quieter now, the silence more pronounced. Even the hum of the refrigerator seemed louder, like a reminder of the stillness in my life. I tried to focus on the task at hand, preparing some late-night snacks, trying to distract myself from the thoughts creeping in. But my mind wouldn't let me forget. I thought about Emily, about how we once dreamed of our future together, how we planned to grow old side by side, navigating life as a team. And now, all of that felt like a distant memory, a dream I could never reach. There's something about being in a relationship for so long that makes you forget how much of your identity is wrapped up in the other person. You start to believe that you're one half of a whole, that your lives are so intertwined that nothing could tear you apart. And then, one day, it all shatters. You're left picking up the pieces, wondering who you were without the other half. I grabbed my phone, scrolling through the contacts. I didn't want to reach out to anyone. I didn't want to burden anyone with my pain, my frustration, my confusion. But Rachel's name stood out. She had been a steady presence in these chaotic times. She had listened when I needed to talk. I had felt a connection with her, someone who wasn't judging, who wasn't telling me what I should do, but simply offering an ear. I hesitated for a moment, but then I sent her a message. Hey, I could really use someone to talk to. I'm struggling with everything, with the kids, with the house, with trying to keep it together. The response came quickly. I'm here, always. Want to talk now? And so we did. I told her about the difficulty of balancing the demands of being a single parent while still trying to heal from everything that had happened. I talked about the guilt, the constant feeling that I wasn't doing enough, that I wasn't enough for the kids. I confessed how hard it was to look at them and not know how to explain what had happened between Emily and me. It's hard to feel like I'm failing them, I said, my voice breaking a little. I try so hard to make things normal for them, to be there for them, but I'm exhausted. I'm still grieving, Rachel, and I don't know how to balance it all. She responded with words that felt like a balm to my wounded soul. You're not failing them. You're doing the best you can, and that's all anyone can ask for. The fact that you're even trying, showing up for them every day, means you're already a great dad. You're still healing, and it's okay to admit that. You don't have to have all the answers right now. Her words settled over me like a warm blanket, and for the first time in days, I felt a sense of relief. I didn't have to be perfect. I didn't have to have all the answers. I just had to show up, day after day, and do my best. And in that moment, I realized that I wasn't alone in this. I had people in my corner, people who understood, and that made all the difference. The next day, I decided to take a step I had been putting off for a while. I went to see a therapist, someone to help me process everything that had been happening. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I knew I needed help navigating through all the emotions. I couldn't do it on my own. Sitting in that therapist's office, I finally allowed myself to let go. I cried. I talked. I let out everything I had been holding inside. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was being heard. I wasn't just a father, or a husband, or an ex-husband. I was a man who was broken, who had been betrayed, who had lost so much but was still trying to find a way to move forward. I wasn't perfect, and I wasn't okay, but that was all right. It was okay to be a work in progress. The days seemed to stretch out endlessly, each one blending into the next. In the beginning, it felt as though every day was a battle, a war against my own emotions, against the house that had become a hollow shell of what it once was. But as time passed, I began to realize that the fight wasn't something I could win overnight. It wasn't something that had a clear end point. Healing wasn't linear. It wasn't a race, and I was learning that there was no finish line, only small victories, moments of clarity, and acceptance. The kids had begun to adjust better than I expected. Sure, there were still moments of confusion, moments when they'd ask why they couldn't have both mommy and daddy together anymore. But they were resilient. Children are resilient, I learned, and I had to remind myself of that. They bounced back faster than I did, adapting to this new reality with a kind of courage that I envied. They still missed Emily, of course. They still asked about her, still looked for her in the spaces where she once was. And every time they did, it stung. It reminded me of the family we once had, the family I had lost. But I also saw how much they needed me to step up. They needed me to be present, to be their anchor, just as much as I needed them. There was no turning back, no going back to what we once were. There was only this new chapter, and we had to learn to write it together. I found myself spending more time with them, taking them on weekend trips to the zoo, to parks, and simply having fun. It wasn't always easy, especially when I felt the weight of my own emotions hanging over me like a dark cloud. But I pushed through. I didn't want them to see the hurt. I wanted them to see that life could still be good, that we could still find joy, even in the midst of pain. One afternoon, I took them to a local park. It was sunny, one of those crisp autumn days that made everything feel fresh, new. As we played on the swings, I found myself looking at them with a new perspective. They were laughing, their faces bright with joy, and I realized something. In spite of everything I had been through, in spite of the heartache, I still had them. I still had this. They were my reason to keep going, my reason to keep moving forward. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was truly present in the moment. I wasn't thinking about Emily, about the pain of the betrayal, about the divorce papers, or the house we were selling. I wasn't consumed by the past. I was simply living in the now. I was enjoying the laughter, the simple joy of being with my kids. And for that brief moment, I felt peace. That night, after putting them to bed, I sat in the quiet of the living room, reflecting on the day. The silence of the house felt different now. It wasn't oppressive like it had been in the beginning. It felt manageable, like I was starting to carve out a new space for myself, a new life. And in that silence, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. It wasn't that everything was fixed. It wasn't that the pain had gone away. But it was like I could breathe again. I could think again. I could see a future that didn't feel like it was built entirely on the past. But even with this newfound sense of calm, there were still difficult moments. Moments when I would think of Emily, when I would remember the person she used to be, the woman I had once loved with everything I had. And then I would feel the sting of betrayal again. It would creep up on me, just when I thought I had moved on. The past would always be there, lingering like a shadow. But I was starting to understand something important. The past could no longer define me. It could no longer control me. Yes, Emily had betrayed me. Yes, she had broken my trust. But that didn't mean I had to let her actions shape the rest of my life. I didn't have to carry that burden forever. I was learning to release it, little by little, piece by piece. I also began to focus on myself again. For so long, I had been Emily's husband, the father of our children. I had forgotten what it was like to just be me, to think about my own needs, my own desires. I had become so consumed with taking care of others that I had lost sight of myself. But now, with Emily gone, I had space to rediscover who I was. I began to spend time doing the things I enjoyed, the things that had fallen by the wayside during our marriage. I started reading again, something I had loved to do before life got so busy. I went to the gym, working out not just to keep in shape, but to clear my mind. One night, as I was sitting in the living room, reading a book, I realized something significant. For the first time since the separation, I felt a sense of clarity about my life. It wasn't that everything was perfect, but it was a start. I had taken my first steps toward healing. I had made the decision to reclaim my happiness, to move forward. And while the road ahead would still be filled with challenges, I felt a sense of empowerment that I hadn't felt in months. I knew that I wasn't done healing. I knew there were still moments of pain, still nights where I would lie awake, replaying everything in my mind. But I also knew that I had the strength to keep going. I wasn't going to let Emily's betrayal define who I was. I wasn't going to let her actions determine the rest of my life. The future was mine to shape. And that, in itself, was a powerful realization.